All right, answer a listener question today. Would love to see a video on the best way to shoot a DASA or double action single action. I love my M9A1, but that first shot with double action is pretty bad. I think most people will be familiar. I know these guns honestly aren't as common or as popular anymore. I don't think anyway. But the gist of what's going on is you have a long double action pull for the first shot. After that, the gun cycles, and you have a lighter single action pull after that. So two trigger pulls to work with. Typically, the first pull, the double action pull, will be anywhere from 2 to 4 pounds heavier than what the single action pull will be. A competition gun like this, it's nothing stupid in it. Because people can get them crazy light where they're kind of like reliability is an issue. This double action is maybe 6 pounds, and the single is 2, somewhere in there. So the single action pull on this, I would say, is a third the weight of the double action. Some of the non-tuned guns or factory guns, like an off-the-shelf Beretta, could be 10, 12 pounds double action, just out of the box, and single action, 3, 4, 5 pound range, anywhere in there. Kind of just depends on the manufacturer and what model springs are put in it, or if it's been messed with at all. So anyway, you've got two different springs to deal with. The question, though, for most people, this gets asked a lot, is what do you do with that long double action pull? Because a couple different ways. Some people like pulling it like part way, stopping, and then pulling the rest, or pulling until you kind of get the heaviest part through it towards the end, then pull the rest. I kind of equate that to the prep and press mindset, which is a total no-go for me. One, it's going to be too slow. Two, for safety. I've also seen even some trainers advocate, like, on the draw, you start to prep the trigger a little bit, and that way when it gets up to eye level, you pull the rest of the way. I think that's a particularly unsafe and stupid idea. I'm not a big fan of touching the trigger or putting pressure on the trigger if your sights are not on the target you intend to shoot. I try to be pretty open-minded about shooting techniques and learning new things. That's one of those things I'm just pretty closed-minded on and refuse to budge. Especially considering, like, teaching classes and telling people techniques that are proven to work, and then if at some point they had an accidental discharge or someone else got hurt, or like a military or police kind of thing, like using that kind of a technique, it would not be a good thing. So anyway, I tell people not to do that. I do not touch the trigger until I want the gun to go off. So with those rules, I can't touch the trigger, or I can want to pull on the trigger at least until the gun's at eye line and it's on the target. How do you deal with the trigger? Well, a quick sidetrack. I press the trigger the exact same way I press the trigger on a striker-fired gun or a single-action gun. Sounds a little crazy. So, all I do is, at one point, I'm not touching the trigger. Then when I start to touch the trigger, I just apply pressure until the gun goes off. That has a longer pull. This has a shorter pull. What's happening is, the way I conceptualize this type of shooting is rolling on the pressure, especially for the DASA gun. So when I'm pressing the trigger, I don't like the thought of, like, not pressing the trigger, then pressing the trigger, not pressing, and then pressing, where it's like a binary switch where it's like on, off, on, off. Instead, I think of it conceptually, and some of this is word games, as rolling on the pressure. So what that means is it's like 0 pounds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And maybe that happens slowly, maybe that happens fast. So if it's a target far away, high accountability target, then it would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, and you just adjust that. But it's like I start from no pressure to stacking on some pressure, rolling on pressure as it kind of goes up in weight, and then at some point the trigger breaks, and that's it. The gun fires. So that's the thought process I have for shooting single action and striker fired guns. Granted, this gun has a 3-pound trigger, 3.5. I don't think I've ever put it on a scale. But if we call it 3.5 pounds, then it'll be 1 pound, 2 pound, 3 pounds, 3.5 pounds, and it goes. So with this, if I'm shooting this with a 6-pound double action pull, all I'm doing is the same thing. So the sights are on the target where I want it to be. I just start to press the trigger, and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I could roll that pressure on quickly, like this, or if it's a partial target or a target 25 yards, I can shoot the double action at 25 yards. I'm just going to roll on the pressure more carefully, more deliberately. And if it's at 5 yards, maybe it looks like that. So anyway, I think it's a matter of how you think about applying pressure, whether it's a striker-fired gun or a double-action gun. It's just, for me, with this, in single action also, it's not like on, off, on, off, on, off. Even if I'm shooting super fast and I move to the target I want to shoot, I think of it as like rolling on pressure or applying pressure straight back in one fluid motion. But I don't think of it, again, it's word games, as like on, off, on, off, on, off. Instead, it's like at one point I'm not pressing the trigger. Then when I do press the trigger, I think of it as like, again, 1 pound, 1 pound, 2 pound, 3 pounds. At some point it goes off. And then the pace at which I roll on or apply the pressure changes. Even if technique-wise, you could look at it on camera and be like, well, it's the same thing. I don't see a difference. I don't think. Like, especially working with people in classes, I think having that thought process of rolling on the pressure, even if it's medium distance target that you're shooting fairly rapidly, whatever those terms mean to you, just thinking it in terms of like applying the pressure straight back, rolling on pressure, even if it's fairly 25 splits or something like that, as opposed to thinking now. Because for most people, when they think now, or they get the sight exactly where they want it, and they think now, then it ends up being some amount of pushing on the gun or affecting the way the gun recoils. So instead, I think it's important to think of it as just applying pressure and rolling it on. And with a double action gun, with some practice, you'd be surprised where shooting production division. So kind of, unfortunately, it's pretty dead for USPSA, but short version, more or less a factory stock gun. With this, you could do some polishing on the internals. Well, back in the day, I think now you can do anything you want. But back in the day, it's just some minor polishing on internals, and changing the springs was about it in the sights. But that'd be it. So it's just an iron-sighted, basically stock pistol with just 9mm ammunition. So I liked this because it was a factory gun. At the time, these were like $900. So not as cheap as the Glocks were, but not a super expensive pistol. Put in some springs. If you want to do a little bit of polishing to make something smoother, that's basically it. So it was super fun. And then training with these guns a bunch, if it's left to right or right to left, I just shoot it normally, unless there's like an activator sequence or something specifically you need to do for that stage or that game. Otherwise, it would just be I'd shoot targets left to right or right to left, whatever made the most sense, whatever I saw first. But I see a lot of people with double action guns end up with a preference where they want to always draw to the closed target because the trigger pulls heavy, and it's like, I want to get that out of the way, or, you know, I'll crank off 3 at that target. The double action shot will kind of just go wherever it wants, and then I'll have the light single action pull. I don't like that way of thinking. With some practice, you can be quite effective with the double action pull. Like I said, I would get to the point where I just pick the order that I want to shoot the targets, and whatever the right order is to shoot the targets, that's fine. And if it's a double action pull on that target, I'll just deal with it. Don't care if it's a partial target or a steel plate or a popper or something at distance. All it's going to change is how I choose to press the trigger and how quickly I choose to apply pressure. So maybe it's a little bit more like this, where I'm rolling on the pressure, just stacking like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for a more distant target or a precision shot or a smaller target. And if it's up close, maybe I just press, all the pressure at once and jam right through it. But either way, it's kind of just the thought process you use. But so the person asking this question, I think it's worth training with the double action trigger to get used to it, and then you get to the point where it's just not eventful. It's just, you just handle the trigger a little bit differently. Also, for dry firing these guns, when you dry fire it, you get the full trigger pull. After that, I don't like just doing trigger presses like that, where you're letting the whole thing go. What I'd recommend is you do a full dry fire press. Afterwards, you release the trigger some, enough that it would pick up the hammer if you were firing single action shots, and then just work the trigger afterwards. So again, what it looks like is full double, releasing the trigger some, but pushing it back into the frame. Pushing it back into the frame hard enough that I'd be firing live ammo, if you can hear the noise or not, but it's like smashing it into the frame, and then working on doing that while you're not flexing your hand, pushing on the gun. anything along those lines. So hopefully that answers questions about double action guns, double action pulls. I know they're not as popular anymore, but I don't know. I learned to shoot on them quite a bit, and I still think they're cool for at least sport shooting. So hopefully that answers your questions. If you have any thoughts or questions, drop it below. Like, share, subscribe if you want. Either way, I appreciate you watching.